How you doing? You doing good, Will? You doing
I'm
good?
good.
You're
I'm
doing
good.
great.
I still heard the music, so I didn't know.
I still heard the music too. Tonight we're going to be talking college football, the best head coaches, and we're just a computer died. Had to change out the cameras. Got too much stuff. Here's a clip for you. Got too much stuff connected to the dongle. Too much stuff happening with my dongle, and that's just that's what's going wrong. We'll talk tonight. Best college football coaches, top 10. Our lists are different, but first we're going to tear apart ESPN's right after this.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon. Pile in here and
We're just all over the place, man. We're just. This is what happens when Ralph doesn't get off and he doesn't set it up, and I'm trying to eat dinner. And what'd you have for dinner tonight?
Chick-fil-A.
Not bad, not bad. I literally had pimento cheese. That's what I ate
Nice.
with some cantaloupe. So
Hey, perfect time to eat pimento cheese. It's the right week.
perfect time.
After
Let's
sweet,
start it off.
Pimento cheese.
Who you got? Who you got winning it? Who's your favorite?
First, we got to talk about
That's-
Jamie. Comment of
that's
the night
just-
already.
I don't know if it's not that one or if it's this one. On time, y'all got to wait for Brown Dress Man to get off his route. John Burns says, I believe that Key will become an all-time great coach. And then Jonesy with his response over there. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or the Light. And man, hop on in. We're going to talk college football. This is what prompted this. ESPN came out with a crazy list, just an interesting list, in my opinion, of the top 10 college football head coaches. And so we said, hey, let's take our time. Let's devise our own. And this is kind of what we've come up with. So, but first, let's take a look at that ESPN top 10 list, Will. And I think we can all sit here and agree. Kirby Smart being number one isn't the yeah, Jonesy, yeah, he can talk golf, but no soccer for the love of God. Kirby Smart being number one, is that the craziest thing you've seen? Like, how do you feel about that? Is he undoubtedly the best college football head coach right now?
Yeah, I think this is the only coach and ranking that I agree with on this list. I think it's the only thing they got right. Getting all 10 first place votes. I don't really understand that. I think they had 10 writers vote, and all of them voted him number one.
Yeah.
I think that's probably really the only thing they got right on this
I'm cool with
list.
Whittingham at 3. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I think what Kyle Whittingham has done at Utah is so under the radar. I mean, everybody forgets he replaced Urban Meyer at Utah, and he hasn't gone anywhere. And he built on that success and has had a ton of success out there. Obviously, not quite national championship level success, but been very, very good. And honestly, the rest of the list I like. I'll tease mine a little bit. I had Ryan Day in the top 10, a little bit higher than number 10, but other than number 2, I think it's a very fair list. Maybe 5. I think I'm not as high on Norvell.
Yeah. I'm cool with the names in the top 10. I've just got them in a different order. And I will say this, we're going to talk about some honorable mentions before we get into it. Lance Leipold's an honorable mention. You and I talked about it, like his overall coaching record isn't impressive just because of where he's been, but he has made programs relevant. And I think that is something that you look at and like he's made Kansas relevant. That's huge.
Yeah, and to be a guy, Kalen DeBoer, in the same boat, I have a guy on my list that's in that same boat to come up through the lower levels of college football. Your name should be thrown out there as one of the best. You've earned that right.
Yeah, and two, I would be interested to see. So I've got ESPN's article pulled up. This is a graphic, wild concept. On3 makes a graphic of ESPN, which is just a hilarious concept.
I don't think ESPN made a graphic.
I don't think. Yeah, it's On3. So we're going to do this. I was joking with my friend down here that covers LSU for On3, and he was like, "Yeah, that's weird. Like that's a weird thing to make a graphic of." I feel like. So let's just kind of run through this because Kirby Smart number one, we're all cool with that. Like, I mean, Will, what is it, 47-2 they are? I mean, it's something ridiculous. that they are under.
Oh, in the last 3 seasons, yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna.
I mean, 94-16 overall, 9-2 in bowl games. He's never lost a playoff semifinal. He's 3-0 in those, 2-1 in title games. His only loss was a Sugar Bowl to Texas in the game that they did not care to play in. So, I don't ignore that, but context.
The context is important. I agree with you. Kalen DeBoer at number 2. Now we're going to have a lengthy discussion about Kalen DeBoer. But I'm just going to read ESPN's, and then as we go through ours, we'll kind of talk about why we didn't put him in our top 10. Kalen DeBoer says, look, I mean, obviously the guy's won. That's one thing too. He's won everywhere he's been. Kind of the same thing you talked about with Leipold, and I think that's a really good comp in the terms of they're respected for what they have done to get to the point that they're at. And the problem is that the hype around DeBoer is at an all-time high because of where he is. If Lance Leipold would have gotten one of the big jobs, which he has been all in the midst of these rumors, he would be. Well, I would say he'd be in the top 10. ESPN did put him in the top 10. He'd probably be in my top 10. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's if it was a higher profile job.
Yeah, I think that little A you see next to DeBoer's name is the reason he's number 2.
I agree.
And good for him. He's striking while the iron's hot, cashing out while his stock is so high. Just played in a national championship game. He fell into a good circumstance to get the job.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. We talked about Kyle Whittingham. We'll talk about him a little bit later. We both have him in our top 10. Dabo Swinney is going to be, I think, not a controversial, but a pick that is a lot of people, look, Jonesy's already said, we've already got 2 differing opinions here. John Burns says Dabo should be 2, and we got no, Dabo shouldn't. He is washed up from Jonesy. So I think when you look across the board, Will, like, we'll talk about it. Dabo's body of work is the reason why he's in both of our top 10s.
Yep.
Even the past 3 years, Will, they're 30 and 10.
Yeah.
We're like even the past 3 years, they're still 30 and 10. Like, that's not bad. They got Norvell at 5. I think that's high.
I disagree with that.
I think it's high.
I think it's very high.
I think Norvell is on his way to being a top 5 coach. I just don't know if he is right now.
His reaction to the playoff snub has really turned me off to Mike Norvell.
That's true. 23 wins in his past 2 years at Florida State. They had won just 26 in the previous 5. Give him credit. Like, he's done a good job. He's turned around a brand name program. Dan Lanning is at number 6 in this list. You and I both think that I kind of think Oregon, with Harbaugh moving on, Oregon could be the class of the Big Ten if they continue. I think that them and Ohio State, with the talent Ohio State brings in, is going to be up there. I like Dan Lanning. Once again, I completely forgot my list. I think it's a little high. I think I have him at 7, but we'll kind of keep rolling there. Sarkisian at number 7 on this list. Once again, the guy that I think a lot of this will, and we'll just kind of roll through it. Kiffin 8, Leipold 9, Ryan Day 10. For me, the names Norvell, Lanning, Sarkisian. Kiffin's got a longer track record just because of his past, but those 3 names for me, it's because of, one, the logo next to their name. That's going to help them out a lot. But also because they're relatively young in the coaching game, and we've seen some guys take a step away. Like, if Harbaugh and Saban are still coaching, maybe one of those 3 is not in this top 10. I mean, and I know one of those is not even in yours for that, and one's not in mine. So I don't know. I kind of sit in the camp of, like, you have a situation where you could sit there and say, okay, these 3 guys are risers. Like, these are guys that could be the next top 4, top 3 head coaches in this next wave. And maybe that's why ESPN decided to put there at 6, 7, or 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, even though if that's why they did that, why are they so high, in my opinion? Because personally, I forget my list too, but before I say something I shouldn't say. Because my order's different. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil it, but no,
Yeah.
it is interesting. And once again, neither of us have Lance Leipold in that number 9. So Will, let's go ahead and jump to this because let's see. Do you want to show our rankings and then get to honorable mentions, or what's more interesting? What do you
Yeah,
feel like we should do?
let's do rankings and then honorable mentions.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start with
We'll probably agree with several honorable mentions.
I believe this is this is mine. I'll start with mine. So this is my kind of top 10. Man, it's really kind of difficult in my opinion to differentiate like what's the criteria. I tried to do a little bit of a mix of both. So I've Kirby's one. You laid it out. I mean, what he's done at Georgia. Like they are the benchmark for college football. They're the benchmark of what people want to do in college football and how you build a program. And he has taken a program, Will, and you know this, we've talked about this, was a perennial 9 to 10 win program and elevated them to this time period that I tell Georgia fans enjoy. Like this is it can't get any better than what you're doing right now as a program. I've got Dabo too. Championships matter to me. And when you go back and you look at what Dabo has done, I mentioned earlier, 30-10 in the past 3 years. 3 years, Will, that have been considered down seasons. Dabo's still winning. And yeah, the reluctance to the transfer portal. Yeah, exactly. The reluctance to the transfer portal. Okay, like I get it. I understand it. And we may see him slide, farther down this list. But he took a program that wasn't necessarily relevant on the national stage and was known for Clemsoning for so long. And he made them one of the powers of college football.
I wouldn't say Clemson was relevant regionally. I mean, I think the first that I'd heard of Clemson, but paid attention is when I know what the comments are going to say. They played Auburn in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, New Year's Eve, and went to overtime. And I was like, who is Clemson?
Yeah,
who is this? They've got this Bowden guy coaching. He's the son of the Florida State guy, but who is Clemson?
Yeah, I mean, look, for Dabo, for me, it's like, okay, yeah, he's won the 2 national titles. You say, well, Bryce, what about else? He is 170-43 with 6 top 4 finishes since 2015.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's pretty good. And yes, the program has kind of slid backwards. But Will, when we're talking about your program sliding backwards and you're still 30-10 with 2 10-win seasons, and arguably you're in a weak conference, so you get a chance to play in Charlotte too. I look, Dabo's a good coach. If he continues to ignore the portal, then I'm cool with taking him out of the top 5 personally, because I think a couple like Dan Lanning, Norvell, and I don't have Sarkisian in my top 10. I think guys like that could take his spot. It's a turning point for Clemson, and we're going to talk about Clemson later on in the year as we kind of look at them as a program. But I can't ignore 170-43, 2 national titles, and one of the more dominant runs that an ACC program has probably ever seen. I don't think that's the ACC conference. Clemson's run has got to be up there with one of the more dominant runs the conference has seen. So that's why I got Dabo.
I would say even just nationally, another note on him: 12-8 in postseason as a head coach. 16 years, 20 bowl games. Obviously, going to 4 playoffs gets you more games, but 12-8. That's a really good playoff record. You think about. You give a good coach a month to prepare, he's going to find your weaknesses and find a way to beat you. And to have a winning record, I think that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And I think, too, when you look at what Clemson has a chance to do, you've had these down years. They feel good about their recruiting class. It's if Garrett Riley turns out in year 2 to really kind of figure things out, that's massive. Like that's absolutely massive for this program, and it kind of puts it back on a kind of an upward trajectory. 3, I've already been called a homer in the comments. Well, if we're just talking about straight winning and consistency, there really truly isn't for a long period of time, whether people like it or not, what Brian Kelly has done. The knock is that he hasn't won the big game. Will, there's only 3 active college football coaches that have won a national title. It's Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, and Mack Brown. It's a hard thing to do. Brian Kelly has consistently positioned teams to be in the hunt in November. Not a lot of programs can talk about that, especially with the places that he's been. Notre Dame, massive brand. LSU, he took a program. One thing I've learned, Will, people don't kind of realize this. When Ed Orgeron was fired and they were playing with a receiver turned DB turned QB in the bowl game against Kansas State on New Year's for that year, this program had 36 scholarship players. And in the span of 3 years, with the help of the portal, they have turned it into positioning themselves to be in that top 12 conversation and potentially get Kelly one of his first national title. The idea, and look, I know other podcasters say this, the idea that you can't do something just because it hasn't been done. Brian Kelly's been knocking on the door for a long time. And I think that he is probably, in my opinion, and how this ranking goes, the best head coach active that does not have a national title. That's how strongly I feel about him. Now, I know, and I'm not going to spoil it, I know you don't have him 3, but I think that you feel similarly about what Kelly can do. I'll let you talk about that when you kind of go through it. But, yeah, man, I mean, look, Brian Kelly is really, really, really good.
Yep.
Kyle Whittingham, you mentioned it. Consistency. Like, Utah is probably going to be close to, if not the Big 12 favorite. I haven't looked at the conference odds. Conference title odds.
I haven't looked at Big 12s.
But unbelievable defense. They get, Cam Rising back for this season. Once again, the model of consistency, constantly being a figure in a player. And I'll say this too, when you talk about conference realignment, because this is kind of one of the non-premier big brands we're seeing, Will. For Utah to be coveted by the Big 12 speaks to what Kyle Whittingham has done. Like, for
the Pac-12 first.
The Pac-12 first,
he
exactly.
took them from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 and now the Big 12.
So for them to not be one of the afterthought programs is massive. And that speaks to what Kyle Whittingham has done at Utah for a very, very long time. Now, this is where it's going to be interesting. I have Ryan Day at number 5. And I was conflicted on this. I really was, because I think that this is the 5th best coach potentially in college football. But he could also potentially be let go after this season. If he doesn't perform, it's kind of a weird conundrum with that. But look, it's a rough year. But we also have to remember, Ohio State has sky high standards. It's the fan base wants perfection, and that's not something that's going to be reached consistently. You can't, really ever almost. It's obviously tense. They've lost 3 in a row to Michigan, but the dude, and I get it, he took over for Urban Meyer. But Will, you're kind of so far out from that. They've got a lot of talent. He is 56-8 overall, 39-3 in the Big Ten, and his last year
losses in conference are the last 3 years to Michigan,
who was a literal playoff contender.
Hey,
every
and
year.
who at Ohio State liked to trip up against an unranked team? Usually when they were ranked number 1, Urban Meyer.
Yes.
So, the narrative that he's overrated, I don't really get. I mean, yes, he inherited the perfect situation. No, he hasn't won a national championship, but he's 56-8. He beats the teams he's supposed to beat.
And I'll say this: most any coach on this list would have a national championship at Ohio State. Day overrated. Well, he would have if a literal comeback from Georgia wouldn't have happened in the Peach Bowl. Like, they would have beat TCU. And I know it's ifs, ands, and buts, and we can't really play that game. I mean, shoot, Tech might have beat TCU that year. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. But yeah.
I think I would argue that just on your list, I see 3 coaches that if they took over instead of him at Ohio State wouldn't have a national title either.
Yeah, I mean, people act like there's a big misconception, Will, that people like it's like this place recruits itself. Well, how do you think it got there?
Like,
how do you think that it got to that point? And look, there's a very valid argument. If all you view as success is as national championships, then Ryan Day's falling short of that. Outside of that, Ryan Day's a good football coach, and he hasn't won it yet, but I feel like he's close to it.
No place recruits itself. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it about me. Everybody says Auburn recruits itself. Why is Auburn not in the top 5 in recruiting every year then? If the place recruits itself, why are they not better at recruiting?
It's a fair assessment. It's a fair assessment. I got Kalen DeBoer at 6. Man, this was tough because I will say this. I like the projectability and the potential of the 3 guys behind him at 7, 8, 9. better than I like Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a winner, and he is going to be set up pretty well at Alabama to win. He's going to fall short of the astronomical expectations that this fan base is going to have because anybody would. This might be crazy. The only person that might not would be the guy who's number one on the list, in my opinion. And I don't even know. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, who knows? And it's going to be ridiculous. DeBoer's a winner. He's done a really good job of it. I just can't understand putting him. I mean, I know you put him lower than I did.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot lower. And, like, maybe not even on the page lower. I can't understand putting him at 2, other than the fact that what we talked about in the opening was the name next to his the literal name, the little logo next to his name.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that, I don't get it. Look, he took Washington to a national title. That was a really good Washington team. He did a really good job there. But although he's won it everywhere he's been, it's been these short little spurts.
Yes.
Is it a
he doesn't have
consistent thing?
that sustained,
Longevity.
Yeah, the longevity at a single place. 2 years at Washington. What was he? 3 years? 2 years at Fresno State. Everybody remembers his great season as Indiana's offensive coordinator. He was there, 2 years? I mean, he hasn't had the longevity at the same place. So to say he's the second best head coach in college football is a big stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind putting him in the top 10 considering who is no longer in the college game. But it kind of goes this. I think the biggest rising star in the coaching industry, and we kind of saw with some of the rumors, it's at number 7 for me, Dan Lanning. I think that Lanning's building a powerhouse. And the fact that he turned down Bama, potentially, rumored to turn down Texas A&M as well, and wants to stay at Oregon and build what they can be at Oregon, Oregon is going to be a force to be reckoned with. They are no longer, because the casual, we're going to call them this, we might have to make T-shirts, the rock dwellers, think of Oregon like the Chip Kelly Oregon. A lot of fast, speedy guys, but they can't hold up against, the big guns. That roster is built to compete. That roster is built to compete in the rough and tough of the Big Ten. It is a far cry from Dan Lanning's first game against Kirby Smart, Georgia, over in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This is a legitimate title contender heading into 2024. And I'll be honest with you, if they make the playoff, he's a top 5 coach easy for me. Well, they should. They should.
They're a shoe-in.
Yeah, they should be a shoe-in. Should be. You're exactly right. I got Lane Kiffin at 8. I know you don't love Kiffin. I get that. I will just say this. I've seen a lot of comments on social media and our Discord, in fact, about, well, it doesn't make you a good coach because you're just using the transfer portal. That's a part of coaching. Like, roster management and roster building is a part of it. And Lane Kiffin has recognized where he is and how to maximize the most out of where he is. You have mentioned this, Will. This is an all-time high for Ole Miss. Like, they have never seen these heights before. He has taken a program that has been good to average to okay over the course of its football history, and they have taken them, in my opinion, to a place that's absolutely just nuts, just crazy. And he has
They're
Ole
beating
Miss
on the door. They're beating on the door.
Man. They are a firm playoff contender in a very hard conference this year. So I love what Lane Kiffin has done at Ole Miss. It is innovative. People don't really necessarily like it, but like I said, he is maximizing his potential at a program like Ole Miss. If you put him with a G next to his name, with an LSU next to his name, an Ohio State next to his name, Alabama next to his name, Oregon, I think this guy has a national title already. I just think he's the kind of guy, and really, really, really offensive genius when it comes to what he wants to do.
If he would have been at USC a few years later, knowing what he knows now, if he was at USC, he'd be a national title contender every year.
Hands down. I agree with that. I got Mike Norvell 9 here, and I see a comment from Mr. Singh. Appreciate you tuning in. He says, I don't see how Kiffin is better than Norvell here. It's just it's the place for me. Ole Miss is not a traditional winner, and him winning there. Now, listen, Norvell has been very, very good. And Norvell, like I said, to kind of begin the show, has won at a level that Florida State has not seen in a long time. What was it, 26 wins in the past 5 years, and he's got 26 in the last 2. I think he has Florida State positioned to not only just be a juggernaut in the ACC, but to be a spot where when this next round of conference realignment comes up, they're on the docket. It's a really and two will he should have a playoff appearance. Like we can all say that. So I mean, he in the span of 2 years, he's done that. Past 7 seasons, and that goes back to his time at Memphis. He's posted 4 10-plus winning seasons and went 13-1 last year. I love what Norvell's done. My 10th spot, and it sits with this, and I'll kind of wrap it up here, and I'll hand it over to you. James Franklin. And, Penn State is a program to me that is comparable to LSU, Tennessee in the SEC, where it's kind of like they're not in tier 1, but they're kind of like a step down in terms of they bring in talent. They've got some really good players, but it's going to take a special year for them to really do something. And Franklin, I think, has really cemented them as a bona fide contender every single year, in and out. Will they're just having an ability to, just having ability. If they can beat Ohio State or Michigan, they're in the playoff, and they haven't been able to do that. They haven't, but James Franklin has a really nice roster. I think he's got a legitimate quarterback too. Can he go into this season and really do some damage? I've got Franklin at 10. I like what he has done. Some other lists have him actually a little bit higher, but you could also say this too: the consistency. Penn State's 21-5 of the past 2 seasons. They've been very, very good. The problem is against top 10 teams in that stretch, they are 1-4. So can he find out a way to win the big game? We appreciate Dr. Bob. Real quick, still on vacation, but can't go without this crowd of boots. Just drop in a shout out. Dr. Bob walked up to me in a Jersey Mike's in Denham Springs, Louisiana on Sunday. I'm sitting there with my wife eating. This person comes up to me over the top of my shoulder and goes, Bryce Koon, in a very slow, drawn-out, soothing voice. I shake his hand, and he can sit here and see this. I had no clue who it was, racking my brain. He goes, it's Dr. Bob. He referred to himself as Dr. Bob, which I appreciated, but we appreciate that, and that was a lot of fun. All right, we're going and moving on to the next list here. You're up, Will. So I know you don't have to go into certainly so much repetitiveness of what I said about coaches, but kind of your own spin of where you kind of go with these top 10 guys.
Yeah, so I value longevity. I value postseason success, trophies, rings, whatever you want to call them. Doing it at more than one place for a couple of these guys, I value. So Kirby Smart, obviously, postseason pedigree, just records, wins and losses. You can't argue with them. 94-16, 855 winning percentage. Nobody on this list has a higher winning percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in 8 years at Georgia. A lot of different cycles. Dabo, he's got, 2 national championships. That means a lot to me. Took a program that was dormant, dying in 2008, midseason. Ended up getting them to a bowl game. They lost the Gator Bowl that year, but you can't argue with what he's done. You can argue about his use of the transfer portal the last few years, adapting to the changes. You can argue that, but you cannot argue on the field. Like you said, last 3 years, 30-10. And that's 3 down years.
That's nuts, man.
75% of his games.
I want to add in there real quick about Dabo Swinney in a time too, Will, where you have people legitimately questioning if Dabo should still have the Clemson job. That type of expectation for Clemson shows you why he's a top 3 head coach in college football.
Yeah. Kyle Whittingham, we talked about it. I mean, he's positioned Utah to be picked up in conference realignment twice.
Mm-hmm.
Mountain West to Pac-12 to Big 12. I think that means a lot. That shows a lot. 11-6 in the postseason. Although it should be better. He's lost his last 5 bowl games. How crazy is that? 2018 Holiday Bowl, crazy. 2019 Alamo Bowl, 2021 and 2022 Rose Bowls, which were all-time Rose Bowls, in my opinion. Great games. And then the Las Vegas Bowl last year. So the guy was 11-1 in bowl games before getting to the Pac-12 and for the last couple of years taking over the Pac-12, getting to 2 Rose Bowls. Still a great accomplishment. I go Brian Kelly at 4. Winning at different places and being able to do it. Central Michigan, although not great there, but he did enough to get himself the Cincinnati job. Capped it off with a 12-0 in 2009 to get the Notre Dame job. Say what you want about Notre Dame. I think it is a very tough place to win, especially in this era, even more so. And when he was there, the different era, when he was there from 2010 to 2021, he was there a long time, 12 seasons. Difficult to win because of how difficult it would be to get in the postseason and to win a national championship. And he played for one in 2012. That's what it says, but we all know that 2012 national title game was played in Atlanta. But he got there. I mean, he had Notre Dame undefeated.
And I want to add to this. Making fun of somebody for not winning the national title that's what trolls do.
Insane.
It's literally insane. Like, especially in the BCS era, which that was.
Yeah.
Like, that is a crazy concept. Whether you think they, regardless, I mean, we all, like you said, we all know the SEC title game that year was between Alabama and Georgia in the SEC title game. But the national championship, losing one makes you a bad coach, man, then your expectations are completely unattainable. Keep going.
Yeah. Like you said, he took over at LSU, that bowl game, 36 scholarship players.
Brutal.
Comes in year one, wins 10 games, wins the SEC West.
Beats Bama and Saban in year
beat
one.
Alabama, down Alabama. But he took advantage of that and won. You got to win the games. We got to win on the field, and he did that. To come into LSU in that situation and win the West in year one is a great accomplishment. In 20 years as a head coach at the FBS level, he's 186-69.
Yeah,
that's really good.
I want to add in this too, to also have an offense, Kelly, an offensive mind that a lot of people down here in Nashville were like, holy cow, that offense is putting up numbers statistically to what that 2019 unit did. To be able to assemble that group and then assemble a staff. Brian Kelly is the ultimate CEO. I will tell you that. That is the ultimate CEO type.
And he wanted to bring his whole staff from Notre Dame. He did the same thing Nick Saban did when he took the LSU job. He sent his plane up there to go get his staff, and nobody came with him. So to pivot like that and put together a staff and win the SEC West in year one, to me, that shows how great of a head coach you are. The CEO, like you said, that shows how good he is. I'm going Steve Sarkisian at 5. Obviously, high-profile guy, had high-profile jobs, took over and awful, and I think awful's being generous. Washington program takes him to 3 bowl games. And it's not showing, I guess, because he didn't coach the bowl game. Showing 2013, they went 8-4 and didn't play in a bowl game. I don't know what the situation is there. Gets the USC job. You all know what happened at USC. And then in 3 years at Texas, he's been to 2 bowl games, obviously made the playoff last year. I really like Steve Sarkisian. I think it means a lot when your name is put in the hat for different jobs. Obviously, he was viewed as a top target for Alabama and did not take it. He's turned around Texas quickly, and we'll see if he can keep up that success. We've seen a couple coaches in recent history turn around Texas, have a good year, but not keep it up. But none of those guys went 12-2 and it made the playoff or made a BCS game. So I think Texas is on a much better trajectory. I think Sark's a really, really good coach. His offense has been near the top of the country everywhere he's been. Alabama, Texas. I know he's got the players to do it. Even had a year as the Falcons offensive coordinator and had a pretty dang good offense that year in the NFL. So I think he's a really good coach, has him on the right track. I'm going James Franklin at 6. Like you said, he's really bad against top 10 teams, but hey, top 10 teams are top 10 teams for a reason. They're really good. And I think a lot of people have forgotten his really incredible stint at Vanderbilt. Back-to-back 9-4 seasons, 2012 and 2013, 2 bowl wins prior to going to Penn State. Nobody has done that. I don't think, Bryce, in our lifetimes.
It's crazy.
Like and you can talk about what he hasn't won at Penn State. He's 88-39 overall at Penn State. 4-5 in bowl games. He's played in a Rose Bowl, a Fiesta Bowl, a Cotton Bowl, a Rose Bowl, and a Peach Bowl.
Yeah.
A lot of big bowl games. So he's right there. Kind of like we said about Ole Miss. They're just knocking on the door. They're just waiting for the opportunity to slip in. Obviously, it's going to be tougher adding Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA to the Big Ten, but they're on the cusp. They're on the cusp of breaking down that door and getting some silverware. I got Ryan Day at 6. I talked about it a little bit while you were talking about it. He's 56-8. You can't argue with that. Three losses in the Big Ten in 6 years. Of course, they're all to Michigan the last 3 years when Michigan was a top 3-4 team in the country. It's really hard. And it's really hard to beat your rivals, especially the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. It's really hard. Really hard. And couple that with the success that Ohio State had with Urban Meyer, and even before Urban Meyer in that rivalry, Michigan fans and that Michigan program wanted it bad. And so it's really hard. And last year we talked about it being a down year. They went 11-2 and played in the Cotton Bowl and went up against an all-time Missouri team.
Yeah.
Just an all-time Missouri
and you have to remember, too, Ohio State was not playing with a full deck in that game. Missouri was, I'm going to tell you right now, bowl games don't matter. But, yes.
I think they matter.
Well, I guess they matter when they matter with an after. Yeah.
All right. What number is this? 7? Lane Kiffin.
Yes.
I go back and forth on Lane Kiffin. I think he's a really good coach. I think his resume is really, really good. Obviously, he does not have the postseason success, does not have the trophies that would go with a resume like that. The guy was an NFL head coach at 32 years old or something like.
Yeah.
But that shows his coaching acumen, his football acumen, and I think that means something. His stint at USC was pretty good. His first 2 years, of course, they were on probation. He goes 10-2 in 2011, no bowl game because they were on probation. Didn't end well, obviously. Had a real good stretch with our friends down there in Boca Raton. 2-11-3 seasons down there. Really impressive at a place like Florida Atlantic. And then, of course, an all-time run at Ole Miss right now. He's had 2 10-win seasons in the last 3 years. That hasn't happened in 50 years since Vaught was a head coach. So, and again, like I said earlier, they're knocking on the door. They're waiting for their opportunity. I think they'll be in the playoff this year. I think fairly easily. Like you're probably sitting them 7 through 10 in that final ranking, I think. And looking at their schedule, it's pretty easy, all things considered, with this new SEC.
There's a path for them to win the SEC.
Their toughest games, they go to LSU, they host Oklahoma, and they host Georgia. Outside of that, every game, I think they'll be a favorite and a heavy favorite. Probably a 2-touchdown favorite in just about every other game. So this could be their year. Lane Kiffin, number 7. Number 8, I'm going Dan Lanning. 22-5 in 2 years at Oregon. Obviously, can he keep that up going to the Big Ten? Can he get in the playoff? Can he take that next step? I think is really the question. Obviously, off to a great start, great recruiter. Like you said, his Oregon teams are completely different than kind of what you think of with Oregon. And to me, that's going to lead to a lot of success. At number 10, I went with kind of a wild card, I think, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. I don't think you can ignore what he's done at Kansas State.
And before when he was at North Dakota State.
Yep, I'm going to get into that too.
Yeah.
In 5 years, he's 39-24 at Kansas State. Obviously, it took him a while to get going. And just to kind of speak to what the Kansas State program is used to, he's tied for second most wins in school history at 39. So that's what he's been able to do at a place that is not historically great at football. obviously won the Pop-Tart Bowl this past year, going 9-4. Won the Big 12. What year was that? What year did they win the Big 12?
They won it last year. 2
Last
years ago.
year. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
2022. Yeah, 2022 Big 12 champions. And then to talk about before that, you add those 39 wins. This guy is 111-37 as a head coach. Won a number of national championships at North Dakota State. I think he's a really good coach. He's kind of flown under the radar. Very interested to see in this new Big 12 where Kansas State will fall, right?
Yeah.
You bring in Utah, you bring in Arizona, who's on the up. You bring in Deion Sanders and all the attention that he brings. If he wins some games, what does that do to Colorado? And where does Kansas State fit into all that? I just don't think you can, if you want to talk about the top coaches in college football, you can't ignore what Chris Kleiman's done in his career and done in 5 years at Kansas State.
You're not wrong, pal. You're not wrong. I got a comment here from Chris. Chris is a great commenter. He goes, he's beaten 2 teams, talking about Lane Kiffin, in all those years as a head coach who finished ranked, Oregon and last year's LSU. Now, listen, let's don't pick on Chris because we do see his profile picture. We understand why he might not like Lane Kiffin. I'm going to point out, he says 2. He beat number 10 Penn State in a bowl game last year. He beat number 13 LSU last year. And he beat number 24 Tulane last year. That is 3 just last season. Let's go back a step further, where he defeated, let's keep rolling, number 7 Kentucky in 2022. There are 4. 2021.
Kentucky was number 7. I forgot about that.
Yeah. 2021, they beat number 13 Arkansas. They beat number 11 Texas A&M. We're at 5. We're at 6 and just in a 3-year span. Here's the thing. The argument that he hasn't won the big game or he hasn't beat the elite team, guys, that's not Ole Miss's. If you'd have told an Ole Miss fan this is what they were going to be doing with Lane Kiffin, they would have done exactly what they've done, Will, and they'd have ponied up the money to get any player they want. I mean, the thing is that like he's a good football coach. He's in my opinion, he's a top 10 coach in college football. I just think that it's one of those things where you're sitting with an opportunity to, like you said, manageable 2024 schedule. Other teams have a gauntlet. Maybe you could find yourself in Atlanta at the end of the year. That's not out of the question. It's just really not if things break right for them. Chris also says that Sark up there is wild too. Basically has a worse resume than Mark Helfrich. I looked this up just so we could know. Helfrich in 2013. Now, Mark Helfrich was a head coach in college football for 4 seasons. He went 11-2 at Oregon 2013. 2014, he went 13-2. 2015, made the playoff. He lost in the national title game that year, by the way. Mm-hmm. Really, he was a good coach. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a slight against Mark Helfrich. Now look, they were bad in 2016. I'm not going to lie. Like that's
if you want to go after Mark Helfrich, you should go after him as a broadcaster.
That's a whole nother story. Yes, that's exactly true. He's 37-16 all time as a head coach. Now you go to Steve Sarkisian, 71-49. He's 0-1 in the playoff. But Will, this is a guy who it depends on what your criteria is. If we're talking recency plus that,
I just wholly disagree with this. He can't have a worse resume than Mark Helfrich. Are you forgetting what he did at Washington? I mean, that program was literally nothing. They were awful. And he went to 3 straight bowl games, won one of them, and parlayed that into the USC job. Like, that was a program that was happy to win 4 games, much less 6.
They went
winning
5-7 in his first year. Yep. He finished with an 8-4 record. Like he won 7 or more games for 3 straight years at Washington. And this isn't Washington with Michael Penix. 4 straight years. Yeah. It just isn't. Whit Ralph is here. He goes, with a little I just got home and he threw him with a passion. But keep going.
You said not Michael Penix, but you forget what quarterback he did have.
Jake Locker?
Jake Locker.
Solid. So, I mean, this
on
is
the infamous Sports Illustrated cover with Cam Newton and Blaine Gabbert.
I don't have Sarkisian in my top 10. I didn't have him there, but I will say this. Well, he has gotten Texas to mean something again.
Yep.
That it's another rock dweller argument of it recruits itself. Guys, Texas had a awful line of scrimmage for the past decade. Like it's just been bad. And they've had players here or there, but he has reestablished that. He brought in some ridiculous players from the portal, and he's got one of the better quarterback rooms talent-wise in the country, and they lost a highly touted guy that went to Duke this past portal cycle. So, I mean, look, Quinn Ewers is going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks taken, I believe, next year. I think that's a pretty safe bet. One of the top 5 quarterbacks, not top 5 picks, people. Do not freak out. You got Arch Manning sitting behind him, regardless of what you think of him. This is a situation, Will, where Sarkisian is an honorable mention for me. I think that he is a riser. I think he's a guy that'll be in my top 10 before the end of the season is over. But let's kind of go to that. So we put out our top 10s. Let's talk about this because, we've got, obviously, we reacted to ESPN's list. We have some honorable mentions here now. I mentioned Sarkisian. I'll just kind of run down a list of guys that I kind of like here. I'll be honest with you. When I was reading this ESPN list and how they broke down the voting, my brain hurt. Their logic that they try to give made less sense than their votes. Kurt Signetti received a vote. Like, I'm going to be truthfully honest with you. If Kurt Signetti gets a vote, Brent Key deserves a vote for what he did at Georgia Tech this past year.
Honestly.
Like, seriously. And that's not a slight against Georgia Tech. Like, if Kurt Signetti's getting a vote from some sports writer, Deion Sanders got 2. Now, Deion Sanders, we've talked about this. Colorado has brought back a sense of relevancy they haven't had since Joel Klatt was the quarterback. It's one of those things. But one thing I like is, I'll say this, and I don't want to take a couple of yours. I need to see more from Drinkwitz. I need to see consistency.
I agree.
I think it was a great fun first year. They really popped off. 365 days ago, people, this was a guy that might have been on the hot seat.
We got to see, is he going to continue to stand on business or not? I think that's the big question.
True. Jonesy says Manny Diaz. I don't have him near my top 10, truthfully.
I think Jonesy's trolling you, but he doesn't even realize how
it's not
good
of a
pick that actually is.
Yeah, I don't know if he's trolling or not, but well, let's just talk about honorable mentions here, Will. How do you feel about Luke Fickell?
I think he's overrated, to be honest. I mean, he did great getting Cincinnati to the playoff, but we got to see what he does at Wisconsin, which, again, is another tough place to win. Looking at, I guess, their ESPN's honorable mentions, guys that got votes. How is Josh Heupel? How did Josh Heupel not get any recognition? You talk about Sarkisian made Texas mean something. Heupel has made Tennessee mean something again. Like, Tennessee hasn't been taken this seriously since Lane Kiffin's 1 year there. Yeah.
No, and if Chris is still here, I wanted to let you know, Chris. I know we talked about the Ole Miss thing. I completely believe there's disrespect against Tennessee and what Josh Heupel's done on this to 100%. Not even receive a vote. Let's give a couple of the names. Kurt Signetti is on there. Jonathan Smith with Michigan State. Mac Brown. I'm going to tell you right now, Mac Brown's not a top 20 college football coach right now for me. I like Mac Brown. I think he's an awesome person. I think that he is in the twilight, obviously, of his career. But I think that we're seeing, the end of that.
Although, if that defense gets fixed in 1 year, we got to be talking about him being back up there as a top coach.
I'm cool with that. Also, too, I shouldn't have said that. Not a top 20. I mean, I don't know, Will.
I think that's fair.
It depends on the parameters of what we're speaking on. If we're talking about heading in the 2024 season, I don't know.
He's not. I don't think he is.
Jonesy brings up a good one. How do you feel about Texas A&M's new head coach over there?
Mike Elko?
Mike Elko. Yeah, where do you think it looks like he is?
He sits around the 20 mark, I think. To turn around Duke like that and have Duke be relevant, just relevant, is a big accomplishment. But I don't really think he's that close to the top 10. Lincoln Riley got 20 votes. How does Lincoln Riley get 20 votes and Josh Heupel not get a single one? makes no sense to me. No sense. I mean, yeah, Lincoln Riley went to the playoff with Oklahoma. It's kind of the same with Ryan Day. Ryan Day's made the playoff. You know, it's kind of the same situation there. Take over for a national championship winning head coach, you know, just to keep the program steady. You know, he made the playoff. He had 3 Heisman Trophy winners. I think that's, you know, a real big feather in his cap, obviously. But going to USC and doing nothing and having one of the worst defenses in the country, to me, that doesn't make you a top 10 coach.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, look, you kind of see some of the names that kind of round out the Athletic did a list, Will, of just some of the names. You know, Matt Rule is the number 18th ranked head coach.
No.
I don't understand that. I get he's a program builder. I get that part. I just don't know. They got Heupel at 17 on this list. Dave Clawson at number 16. I would just say this, man. People think it's hard to win at Georgia Tech. It's hard to win at Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Like Wake Forest is a hard place to win. And he has been.
But to say he's the number 16 head coach.
Once again, though,
I got to see more wins. I got it, but I got to see more wins.
Understandable. It's the parameters, though. He has led Wake Forest to 8 wins or more 4 times, which is massive. That's huge. He's the only head coach in NCAA history, though, Will, who has won 10 games at 4 different D1 programs.
Okay.
So that's cool. But if we're talking about the parameters, then yeah, like he's a top 20 head coach. I'm cool. Yeah. I'm cool with saying that. But if we're talking about where they are now, he could get fired at the end of this year if they're terrible.
Yeah. Where did the Athletic have Mike Gundy?
I'm gonna.
He got 3 votes from. He got 3 votes from ESPN.
Number 20. He's 166-79 overall. He's won Big 12 Coach of the Year 3 times, and he has 8 seasons, Will, of 10-plus wins since 2010.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's a top 20. I might put him top 15.
And we know how good he is at renegotiating contracts. He might be the best in the business at doing that.
That's true. And I also want to say this, too, about Mike Gundy. He's done it at somewhere where you really shouldn't be doing it. In a time frame of where you shouldn't be doing
season since 2010. Yeah, probably not. You think
they were like this close to winning the Big 12 title against Kansas State 2 years ago.
Yeah, literally
that close.
That close.
I'll go. Mark Stoops is number 14.
No.
Once again, though, Will, this stat right here, Ralph, was Brom mentioned. I'm going to get to that here in just a second, Ralph. This is a crazy stat for you. In over a century of playing football, Kentucky has had 4 10-win seasons all time. Stoops has 2 of them. See, if you view it within the lens of where they are at and winning a place where you don't normally win like that, then like Stoops is I'm not saying that he's not a good football coach. He's a good football coach.
It's tough because you think about the top 10, like these are 10 guys that you could take and be like, they're going to win a national championship. Like they could win a national championship in 2024. I think, or even like top 20 coaches, because there's 100 and I think it's 133 now.
Yeah,
like it's a very, very small percentage of coaches.
Jones, you should be banned for that comment. Jeff Brom is number 13 on this list. Will he is 4-3 against top 10 opponents since 2018. Purdue was the notable upset people that Ohio State would lose to. This is crazy. Purdue has had only 1 10-win season in the history of their program. And Brom went 17-9 his last 2 years. Guys, he won at Purdue. And we talked about this. Like he's one of the more underrated coaches in all of college football.
He also gave up 50.5 in the Music City Bowl.
That is true. Well, he didn't personally, but
he was responsible.
I get it. He was also 30-10 in 3 years at Western Kentucky.
He's really good, and he's got the best XFL in-game interview of all time,
which helps. I'm not going to talk about Kirk Ferentz. I am not until you take your college football program takes things seriously. I'm just not going to talk to him. I mean, it's
until your football team scores more points than Caitlin Clark. I'm not going to take you seriously. Did you see that in 4 years? Like,
Yeah.
how does she score? Like, I could see a player, especially they can score like her, score more than the football team. But the amount of points she scored more than the football team did makes zero sense. I think she averaged more points in a season for those 4 seasons than Iowa scored in one season.
Dude,
or something. It's something crazy.
you look at the stats. They've won 10 games 3 out of the last 4 seasons. Now, they also
worst division
play
in college
in
football.
the worst
division in college football. It's worse than the ACC.
Yeah.
It's worse than the Sun Belt. It's worse than the Sun Belt. Like,
it's not worse than the Conference USA, but it's pretty dang close. I mean, like, honestly.
I don't know.
They're 31-13 in Big Ten play the last 5 seasons. It's an outstanding defense and just a anemic, abysmal, dismal, just embarrassing display of college football offense. And I'm sick of it. I hate it. I don't want to watch any of their games.
No effort in offense. Zero.
And
like
nepotism.
You have to try to be
nepotism all over.
Well, they finally made him fire him. So didn't he get another
Begrudgingly.
job? Didn't Brian Ferentz get another job like immediately? Let me see. I think he already got a job.
Overrated as all get out there, Jonesy. Billy Napier
will be fired.
Will be fired. This was his other comment.
Yeah,
and he's not talking about the doctor.
You know what? I'm understanding why the Falcons have had so much trouble.
Oh God, did they hire him?
Brian Ferentz played for the Falcons. 2006. He was an offensive lineman. Ralph can't even say it right.
I got this for you. So
no, he does not have a job.
To round out the top 25 of this athletic list, number 23, Hugh Freeze. 24, Jed Fish. That's not a. He's 16-21.
Where was Freeze?
23.
Incorrect.
Rich Rod's number 25.
Love that. He's too low. He should be ahead of Freeze.
Will, listen to this. Listen to this write-up. This is from The Athletic. We're going to give it away for free.
Wait a second. One thing on Rich Rod. He is a Pat McAfee shank away from playing for a national championship. Think about that.
That is actually true. Wow. The godfather of the zone read went 60-26 with 3 top 10 seasons in his last 3 years at West Virginia. He takes the Michigan job, massive, weird, just bad fit. He went well, though he goes from 3 to 5 to 7 wins and gets fired. Then he won 26 games in 3 seasons at Arizona. Arizona hasn't won like that since until Jed Fish got there.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's 18-6 at FBS startup, FCS, former FCS powerhouse. Really, they're a good FCS team, Jacksonville State. So I don't know.
If Rich Rodriguez gets an interview with Auburn in December.
Ooh, for the Auburn job?
Yes.
I'd say he should. Here's a couple other names. No, I know who you want. At 26, Troy Calhoun. That's who you want to come to Auburn, run the triple option.
Oh, please. I mean, my prayers were nearly answered in 2009 when Auburn interviewed Paul Johnson. You just think if he could have come to Auburn and did what he did at Georgia Tech, Auburn would still be running the triple option.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he'd have retired.
To round out this, you have Troy Calhoun, Jamie Chadwell, Matt Campbell, Jeff Traylor, Mario Cristobal, Drink, PJ Fleck, Dave Doran, Willie Fritz, Mac Brown, Jason Candle at Toledo, and Jeff Munkin at Army.
Candle has had a sneaky good, very good tenure at Toledo.
Yeah, and consistent. So college football coaches, that's all we got for you on this episode of The Crowd. We appreciate you. We thanks so much for hanging out with us here over the past hour. We're going to be live once again next Monday, and we got to come up with some show topics because we've got a couple. We could rank ACC coaches. We could go through schedule review previews. I'm kind of starting ready to do that, especially with spring ball wrapping up. He retired because he had to answer KQ questions at all. Oh God. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. Can you imagine that 2013 offense in an actual triple option
You want-
wing tee?
You want some? No, never mind. Never mind.
Just nothing.
Nothing.
Just nothing. Hey, we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.